Warning, spoilers ahead. Today, I'm going to recap an action fantasy film released in 2018, entitled Psychokinesis. This movie tells about a man who suddenly gets a superpower that makes him able to control objects with his mind. One day, a tragedy happens to his daughter. Will his newly acquired power be able to help him save his daughter? Let's find out together. The story begins with a girl named Roo-Mi and her mother selling fried chicken in their small restaurant located in a shopping complex. Their fried chicken is quite famous, so they often get interviewed for TV programs. She always tells how hard she and her mom struggled after her father left them years ago. They keep trying to develop the recipe until finally they succeed. One night, while Roo-Mi is sleeping in her restaurant, a group of people come and bang her door. Realizing it, Roo-Mi immediately wakes up and calls her neighbor. It looks like they are construction workers tasked to evict tenants of the shopping complex. The workers force their way in by breaking the window and force Roo-Mi out of her shop. Shortly after, her mother comes in a van. Seeing her daughter overwhelmed, she tries to help her. However, there are too many workers. So she goes back to the van and tries to run them with her van. However, it doesn't work. She hits a pole and is forced out by those workers. They pull her out roughly until she accidentally gets thrown with her head hitting the pavement first. Knowing her mother is unconscious, Roo-Mi frantically rushes to check her. The atmosphere becomes so quiet, only Roo-Mi screams and the small murmurs of the workers can be heard. Not long after that, the neighbors come to help them. They take Roo-Mi's mother to the hospital and wait anxiously outside the operation room. Unfortunately, the doctor can't help her and she passes away. At the same time, a meteor is falling from the sky somewhere nearby. The meteor seems to contain an unknown substance that seeps through the ground and contaminates a nearby spring. Coincidentally, the next morning, a man named Han is jogging on the mountain track. He drinks the water from the spring and tastes something weird in it. He tries to warn the other exhausted jogger, but all they care about is to get some drink. So he ignores the weird water and continues his day. After finishing his morning routine, he goes to the bank where he works as security. He constantly complains to his co-worker that he got a stomachache after drinking water from the spring. After his shift is done, he walks back home with his stomach still feeling weird. Han decides to drink soju first at a nearby shop to wash down his stomachache. He drinks until night alone, when suddenly he groans in pain. His hands grip tightly as he can't hold back the pain. Without realizing it, the plastic cup in front of his hand is crushed along with the movement of his hand. When he lets go of his grip, the things around him get knocked away. After all that X-Men shit, he passes out due to the sheer amount of soju he drank. Looking at the mess Han made, the shop owner wakes him up and shoo him away. Arriving at his messy home, Han immediately lays on his bed and takes out a cigarette. He tries to take the lighter on his right. Suddenly, the lighter is pulled into his hand. He immediately sits up in surprise, wondering what just happened. But he shrugs it off as he thinks that he is still drunk. His attention is distracted by a phone call from an unknown number. It turns out that Han is the long-separated father of Roo-Mi. She calls him to tell that her mother, his ex-wife, has passed away. At the funeral home, the mourners express their condolences to Roo-Mi. Han arrives there and walks past Roo-Mi as he doesn't recognize his now adult daughter. But after a few steps, he turns back and recognizes the familiar face of his daughter. They have a talk for the first time in years. The atmosphere is still awkward between them. He asks Roo-Mi what happened to her mother, but she is hesitant to answer. She seems to haven't forgiven him for leaving them back when she was still a child. Roo-Mi only calls him because she accidentally found his number on her mother's phone. Suddenly a noise is heard from the entrance of the funeral home. It turns out that the thugs come with their boss called CEO Min. He is the source of Roo-Mi and her shopping complex neighbor's problem. He comes to give her settlement money for her mother's incident. But of course, Roo-Mi refuses and casts them away. She will only settle this matter in court. Things get heated for a while, but not long after, a man named Kim comes to calm the situation down. After the thugs leave, Kim greets Han and asks if he is Roo-Mi's father. He introduces himself as Roo-Mi's lawyer and gives him a business card. Afterwards, Kim brings Han to visit the shopping complex and explains the situation to him. Kim says that this area will be redeveloped into a large-scale duty-free shopping center for Chinese tourists. Tesan Construction, led by CEO Min, won the project. Therefore, they plan to evict the area. The tenant in the area demand compensation. However, Daesan Construction doesn't want to give such compensation. Because of that, CEO Min's men force them all out. Then, Kim shows him Roo-Mi's shop where she was selling fried chicken with her mother, who worked hard to develop their shop into the best fried chicken in town. Suddenly, Han interrupts the conversation and immediately asks Kim's intention. Whether he does this because he believes that they can win the case, or just because he likes Roo-Mi. Which Kim immediately denies. He tells Kim to walk away if he is not sure, because this case will only bring hardship to his daughter. As Han walks away, Kim assures him that they will definitely win the case. Ignoring his words, Han continues walking away. Han intends to take a smoke break, but he stops for a moment, remembering Roo-Mi's gaze on him. In frustration, he throws the cigarette that he holds, and the things around him suddenly get thrown away too. He remembers the same incident when he was about to pick up the lighter. He immediately goes home and tries to do it again, and it works. Even the other things in his room are lifted and floated. After that, he visits his workplace to ask his friend. He asks if a magician can make a lot of money. It looks like he tries to find a way to commercialize his newly found power. But seriously, a magician? Dude, you can be so much more. The next day, Han comes to Roo-Mi's mother's funeral. Then, they return to the shopping complex and plan a revolt. However, Han says that it is impossible to fight against those workers once the bulldozers came to demolish the place. He also asks Roo-Mi to drop the resistance and come with him and continue her studies. This negativity sparks a fight between Han and several people there, including Roo-Mi. Roo-Mi then asks him to leave, and so he leaves. Later that night, Han visits a nightclub that his friend mentioned. He tries to apply for a job with his superpowers as a magician, and he gets accepted. Money is not a problem now. The next morning, Kim and Roo-Mi meet with the prosecutor's direct supervisor of her mother's case to help them reinforce the evidence they have. Unfortunately, he says the evidence is not strong enough. Kim says that there is actually evidence recorded by a car's dashboard camera. However, the owner said it was fake. CEO Min must have met him first. At the end of the meeting, Kim plans to visit the owner of the car to persuade him, and Roo-Mi returns to the shopping complex. At the shopping complex, Han is already waiting for Roo-Mi. After she comes, Han asks Roo-Mi to have a private talk. There, Han shows his superpower to Roo-Mi. He says that he got a job because of this ability and asks Roo-Mi to start a new life with him. However, it seems that Roo-Mi isn't interested in that. It looks like she still doesn't realize his true power yet. She even gets angry and asks whether Han only learned about silly tricks during these 10 years. Roo-Mi thinks that Han always runs away from trouble and is an irresponsible father. Although Han has told her the reason why he left was to save the family from debt, Roo-Mi still comes out and leaves him. Han walks home while imagining the past when he left the young Roo-Mi. Suddenly, he sees CEO Min and his men getting ready to head to the shopping complex. Witnessing this, Han rushes back. In the shopping complex, several men on the rooftop see CEO Min's entourage and immediately call their colleagues downstairs. They all get ready to face CEO Min and his men. Some of them went to call the police. When CEO Min and his men arrive, they immediately get into a fight. CEO Min and one of his men just see and record the incident. In the midst of a fight, Han comes to help. With his power, he defeats dozens of people in one punch. Everyone there is shocked by Han's power. Even CEO Min's men lost their will to fight back anymore. The fight stops after one of the neighbors manages to bring policemen there. After that, they all go to the police station to report the incident, and both parties claim to be victims. Roo-Mi tries to convince the police that CEO Min and his men attacked them. CEO Min denies it and blames Han for hurting his men with weird power. He then shows the recording as evidence. But at a glance, it just looks like Han flailing his hand into his men. This makes CEO Min, who explains it passionately, look like a lunatic. The police tell them to go home and settle this as both parties' fault, as the evidence looks silly. When leaving the police station, they laugh in relief because they managed to get a small victory on CEO Min and his men. They also thank Han for helping, as they seem to start welcoming him to the community. They return to the shopping complex and close the road with various objects that Han moves with his power. This makes CEO Min's men frightened and runs back to their base. On the other hand, CEO Min gets a call from his superior to have a meeting. He wonders what it's about. The following day, CEO Min meets with director Hong to talk about the project. Director Hong at first shows a friendly manner. But then, she sends some people into the room to beat CEO Min. Director Hong asks what the problem is that causes the eviction to be delayed. CEO Min tells her about Han. So director Hong starts to construct her plan. It starts with her leaking Han's power to the media and setting up a bogus expert who talks nonsense about his dangerous ability. The next morning, 2 policemen come to the shopping complex to arrest Han for no apparent reason. Roo-Mi immediately calls Kim and tells him about it. Not long after hanging up the phone, Kim gets another call from the prosecutor informing that Roo-Mi's mother's case is over, since someone confessed to killing her. It's all director Hong's plan. She also tells CEO Min to change the company name and work under a different company name to avoid trouble and get the police on their side. Not long after that, a group of police officers approaches the shopping complex to evict and demolish the area. Commotion and chaos ensue. At the same time, director Hong meets with Han in the police station. She thinks that his power is interesting and gives him a choice to serve under her. Otherwise, she will make him the enemy of society. Then, on the way to his cell, Han sees the incident on TV. Knowing his daughter is in danger, he immediately uses his powers to escape. He meets director Hong at the parking lot to give his answer, then heads to the shopping complex. Kim is also there to help Roo-Mi and the others escape from being caught. There, Han immediately beats the police who try to chase them. In the midst of the commotion, Roo-Mi falls from the top of the building. Han quickly dives down to save his daughter and succeeds. He then hands Roo-Mi to her neighbors on top of the building and tells them to look after her. Roo-Mi is so sad and emotional knowing that her father will leave her again. Han then gets down and turns himself into the police. 4 years later, he gets out of prison and is picked up by Kim. In the car, he tells him that he is going to marry Roo-Mi, which Han already guessed from the start anyway. They visit the shopping complex area that now has become a flat, empty area. It turns out the redevelopment project was a failure due to various things, so the eviction turns out to be for nothing. The story ends with Han reuniting again with her daughter at her new fried chicken restaurant. Things seem going to be okay as he works there serving drinks with his power. The end. Parents will be parents, no matter what happens. Do you think Han has utilized his power as best as he can? Let us know what you think in the comment below. Thank you for watching, and as always, see you next time.